Take it off! Take it off! The chant of 15,000 people filled the Las Vegas arena as Elvis stood beside a trembling young woman who clutched desperately at something on her head. Lisa Martinez had come to the concert, hoping to feel normal for just one night, but now the entire crowd was encouraging her to remove the one thing that helped her feel human. What they didn't know was that underneath that carefully styled wig was the reality of a 28-year-old mother's battle with stage 3 breast cancer. Elvis had no idea that his simple act of kindness was about to create the most powerful moment of body acceptance in concert history. But to understand why this moment would become a turning point in how society views beauty and courage, you need to know about a young mother who had been fighting for her life while trying to protect everyone around her from the truth. Because this story begins 6 months earlier, when Lisa Martinez first heard the words that would change everything. It was March 15, 1976, at the International Hotel in Las Vegas. Elvis was performing his evening show to a sold-out crowd of 15,000 people. The atmosphere was electric as the king moved through his classic repertoire, building toward what would become an unforgettable moment of human connection. In Section C, Row 12, Lisa Martinez sat with her husband Roberto and her 5-year-old daughter Emma, trying desperately to appear like any other family enjoying a night out. Lisa had spent 3 hours getting ready for this concert. Not the usual hour most women might spend, but 3 painstaking hours of careful construction. First came the medical tape around her chemo port, hidden beneath a high-necked blouse, then the makeup to cover the pale complexion and dark circles that chemotherapy had given her. Finally, the most important part, the wig that cost more than their monthly rent, styled to look exactly like the thick, dark hair she'd lost 4 months ago. Roberto watched his wife anxiously as Elvis began "Love Me Tender." He knew how much this night meant to Lisa. It was her reward for completing another brutal round of chemotherapy. For 6 months, she'd been fighting stage 3 breast cancer with a fierce determination that amazed everyone who knew her. But what amazed Roberto most was how she'd managed to keep their daughter Emma completely unaware of the battle raging in their household. Emma, innocent and bright-eyed at 5 years old, had no idea that Mommy's sudden love for hats and scarves wasn't a fashion choice. She didn't understand why Mommy was always tired, or why Daddy did most of the cooking now. All Emma knew was that tonight they were seeing Elvis Presley, and Mommy seemed happier than she'd been in months. Lisa's journey with cancer had begun with a routine self-examination 6 months earlier. She'd felt a small lump, dismissed it initially, but Roberto had insisted she see a doctor. The diagnosis had hit like a physical blow: stage 3 breast cancer, aggressive, requiring immediate treatment. At 28 years old, with a kindergartner at home, Lisa suddenly found herself facing her own mortality. The hardest part hadn't been the diagnosis itself, but deciding how to handle it with Emma. After countless discussions, Lisa and Roberto had chosen to shield their daughter from the full reality. Emma knew Mommy wasn't feeling well and had to visit doctors, but she didn't know about the cancer, the chemotherapy, or the possibility that Mommy might not survive. This decision had required enormous sacrifices. Lisa had to wake up extra early on school days to put on her wig before Emma saw her. She'd learned to hide her nausea and fatigue behind forced smiles and invented energy. When Emma wanted to play, or needed help with something, Lisa would push through the exhaustion and pain to be the mother her daughter needed. The financial strain was crushing. Roberto worked 2 jobs: his regular position at a construction company and weekend shifts at a casino. But the medical bills were astronomical. The wig alone had cost $800, money they couldn't afford but Lisa considered essential. "I need to look like myself for Emma," she'd told Roberto when he'd questioned the expense. Tonight's concert tickets had been Roberto's idea. "You need something to look forward to," he'd said, using their last bit of savings to buy 3 seats. Lisa had initially protested. They needed that money for medications, but Roberto had been insistent. "You're fighting for your life every day. One night, just one night, you get to be Lisa the Elvis fan, not Lisa the cancer patient." As Elvis moved through his set, Lisa found herself relaxing for the first time in months. The music transported her back to simpler times, to the young woman she'd been before cancer had invaded her life. She sang along softly, careful not to dislodge her wig, and for brief moments, she almost forgot about the disease that was trying to kill her. But Elvis Presley had always possessed an unusual ability to read his audiences, to sense when someone in the crowd needed special attention. Tonight, something about Lisa caught his eye. Perhaps it was the way she held herself so carefully, or the protective way her husband watched her, or simply the joy on her face that seemed to be fighting against some deeper sadness. During a quiet moment between songs, Elvis found himself looking directly at Lisa. Even from the stage, he could sense that this woman was carrying some kind of burden. His performer's instincts, developed over decades of connecting with audiences, told him that she needed more than just entertainment tonight. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis said into his microphone, his voice warm and conversational, "I see someone out there who looks like she needs to feel beautiful tonight." The arena fell quiet as people followed Elvis's gaze toward Section C, where Lisa suddenly realized thousands of eyes were focusing on her. Lisa's heart stopped. This was her worst nightmare: being singled out, being noticed, having attention drawn to her carefully constructed appearance. She shrank into her seat, her hands instinctively moving to check that her wig was secure. "You sweetheart, in the blue blouse," Elvis continued, pointing directly at Lisa. "What's your name?" Roberto squeezed Lisa's hand encouragingly, but she could barely breathe. "Lisa," she managed to call out, her voice barely audible over the crowd noise. "Lisa, that's a beautiful name. Lisa, you look like you're trying to hide from something tonight. But honey, whatever it is, you don't need to hide from us. We're all friends here." The words hit Lisa like an emotional sledgehammer. Hide, that's exactly what she'd been doing for 6 months. Hiding from Emma, hiding from neighbors, hiding from herself. The carefully applied makeup, the expensive wig, the high-necked clothing, it was all an elaborate disguise designed to hide the reality of what cancer was doing to her body. Elvis began walking toward the edge of the stage, and Lisa realized with growing panic that he was coming closer. Emma was looking up at her with excitement, not understanding why Mommy suddenly looked so scared. "Lisa," Elvis said, now close enough that his voice carried clearly without the microphone. "I want you to come up here with me. Is that okay?" The invitation terrified her. On stage, under the bright lights, in front of 15,000 people, there would be no hiding. The makeup might not hold up, the wig might shift, everyone would see her exactly as she was, a sick woman pretending to be healthy. I don't think I can," Lisa said, her voice shaking. But Roberto was already helping her to her feet. "Go," he whispered. "You deserve this moment." Emma clapped excitedly, thrilled that Mommy was going to meet Elvis. Lisa's walk to the stage felt like the longest journey of her life. With every step, she was aware of the wig on her head, the makeup on her face, the carefully hidden signs of her illness. Security helped her onto the stage, and suddenly she was standing next to Elvis Presley, exposed under the bright lights, visible to thousands of people. Elvis took her hand gently and looked into her eyes. Up close, he could see what the distance had hidden, the subtle signs of someone fighting a serious illness. The slightly gaunt appearance that makeup couldn't quite conceal, the careful way she held herself, the fear in her eyes that went deeper than stage fright. "Lisa," Elvis said softly, close enough that only she could hear. "Honey, are you sick?" The question, asked with such genuine concern, broke through all of Lisa's carefully constructed defenses. Tears began flowing down her cheeks as she nodded silently. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Elvis asked, his voice full of compassion. "Cancer," Lisa whispered, the word barely audible. "Breast cancer. I didn't want anyone to know. I especially didn't want my little girl to know." Elvis felt his heart break for this young woman. He'd dealt with his own family's health struggles, had watched his beloved mother Gladys battle various ailments. He understood the weight of trying to protect your family from your own suffering. How old is your little girl? Elvis asked gently. 5. Her name is Emma. She's right there. Lisa pointed toward the audience where Emma was waving excitedly at her mother. Elvis looked out at the little girl, then back at Lisa. In that moment, he understood everything. The careful appearance, the fear, the desperate attempt to maintain normalcy for her child's sake. Lisa, Elvis said, loud enough now for the audience to hear. I want you to know that you are one of the bravest people I've ever met. You're fighting for your life while still being a mother to that beautiful little girl. The audience, who had been watching this tender exchange with growing curiosity, began to understand that something profound was happening on stage. But honey, Elvis continued, I think you're carrying a burden that's too heavy for one person. You're trying to be perfect for everyone else, but what about being real for yourself? Lisa looked out at the sea of faces watching her, then at Emma, who was standing on her chair now, beaming with pride that her mother was on stage with Elvis. I'm wearing a wig, Lisa suddenly said, into Elvis's microphone, her voice carrying through the arena. I lost all my hair from chemotherapy. I didn't want anyone to see me like this. The confession hung in the air for a moment, and Lisa immediately regretted it. She'd just revealed her deepest shame to 15,000 strangers, and worse, to Emma. But something unexpected happened. Instead of shock or pity, the audience began to applaud. It started slowly, a few people clapping, then more, until the entire arena was giving Lisa a standing ovation. Elvis smiled at the crowd's response, then looked back at Lisa. You know what I think, honey. I think real beauty isn't about having perfect hair or perfect anything. Real beauty is about having the courage to be exactly who you are, even when it's scary. Lisa was sobbing now, overwhelmed by the acceptance she was feeling from thousands of strangers. For 6 months she'd been so afraid that people would see her differently if they knew about her cancer. Instead, they were celebrating her honesty. Lisa, Elvis said, his voice gentle but clear, what would you like to tell your little girl right now? Lisa looked out at Emma, who was watching with wide eyes, not fully understanding what was happening but sensing its importance. Emma, Lisa said into the microphone, her voice stronger now, Mommy has been sick, but I'm fighting to get better. And no matter what happens to my hair or how I look, I'm still your mommy, and I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Emma called back, her 5-year-old voice carrying clearly, I love you too, Mommy. You're the most beautiful mommy in the world. The arena erupted in cheers, and Lisa felt something shift inside her. For the first time since her diagnosis, she felt beautiful not in spite of her cancer, but because of her strength in fighting it. Elvis put his arm around Lisa's shoulders. You know what? I think it's time we show everyone what real courage looks like. Would you be willing to show us who you really are? Lisa understood what he was asking. Her hands trembled as she reached up to her wig. This was it, the moment she'd been dreading for 6 months, the moment when everyone would see her as she really was. Slowly, carefully, Lisa removed her wig. The arena fell silent as her bald head was revealed under the bright stage lights. For a moment that seemed to last forever, 15,000 people saw Lisa exactly as she was, a young mother fighting cancer, vulnerable and real and absolutely beautiful in her authenticity. Then something magical happened. A woman in the front row took off her hat. Then another person removed their cap. Within minutes, thousands of people throughout the arena were removing hats, scarves, anything covering their heads, in solidarity with Lisa. Elvis watched in amazement as his audience spontaneously created a moment of unity and acceptance that transcended entertainment. This was human connection at its purest level. Lisa, Elvis said, his own voice thick with emotion, look around. Look at what you've inspired. Lisa gazed out at the sea of people who had literally uncovered themselves in support of her courage. Men and women of all ages, showing their solidarity by making themselves vulnerable too. Thank you, Lisa whispered into the microphone. Thank you for seeing me. Elvis began to sing then, but not one of his usual songs. Instead he sang, You Are So Beautiful, dedicating it to Lisa and to everyone who had ever felt afraid to show their true selves. As Elvis sang, something extraordinary happened in Section C, Row 12. Little Emma, who had been watching her mother with growing understanding, stood up on her chair and called out, "Mommy, you're beautiful. You're the most beautiful mommy." Roberto, tears streaming down his face, lifted Emma so she could see better and shouted, "That's my wife. That's my beautiful, brave wife." The moment became a celebration not just of Lisa's courage, but of authentic beauty in all its forms. When Elvis finished the song, he took Lisa's hand and led her to the front of the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elvis announced, "I want you to remember this night. Remember Lisa Martinez, who showed us what real beauty looks like. Remember that courage isn't about being perfect, it's about being real." As Lisa prepared to return to her seat, still bald, still vulnerable, but somehow transformed, Elvis whispered something in her ear that would stay with her for the rest of her life. "Honey, you've got more beauty in your pinky finger than most people have in their entire bodies. Don't you ever forget that." Lisa returned to her family to thunderous applause, but she was no longer the same woman who had walked onto that stage. The fear that had controlled her for 6 months was gone, replaced by a strength she didn't know she possessed. Emma wrapped her arms around her mother, not caring about the missing hair, only caring that this was her mommy who had just done something incredibly brave. "Mommy," Emma said, "why did you wear the pretty hair if your real hair is gone?" Lisa knelt down to her daughter's level, no longer trying to hide anything. "Because I was scared that people wouldn't think I was pretty anymore. But you know what I learned tonight? Being real is more beautiful than being perfect." The rest of Elvis's concert was unlike anything he'd ever performed. The energy in the room had shifted from mere entertainment to something spiritual, something healing. He dedicated several more songs to Lisa and to everyone fighting their own battles with illness, fear, or self-acceptance. After the show, Elvis's security team brought Lisa and her family backstage. Elvis spent nearly an hour talking with them, sharing his own experiences with vulnerability and public perception. "Lisa," Elvis said as they prepared to leave, "I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll never be afraid to be exactly who you are again." "I promise," Lisa said, and meant it. The story of Lisa Martinez and her moment with Elvis spread quickly beyond Las Vegas. Within days, the local newspaper had picked up the story, then national media outlets. Lisa found herself becoming an inadvertent spokesperson for cancer patients who felt pressure to hide their illness. She began receiving letters from women around the world who had been inspired by her courage. Many shared their own stories of hiding from cancer, of feeling ashamed of their changed appearance, of struggling to maintain dignity while fighting for their lives. Dr. Patricia Williams, an oncologist who had been in the audience that night, was so moved by what she witnessed that she began incorporating Lisa's story into her patient counseling. "What Lisa showed us," Dr. Williams explained, "is that healing isn't just about treating the disease, it's about accepting yourself completely throughout the process." The incident also had a profound impact on Elvis himself. Joe Esposito noticed that Elvis began paying even more attention to individual audience members, always looking for opportunities to provide encouragement to those who seemed to be struggling. After that night with Lisa, Joe observed, Elvis understood that his platform could be about more than entertainment. He realized he could help people find their own courage. Elvis began incorporating messages about self-acceptance and authentic beauty into his performances. He would often speak about the importance of being real versus being perfect, and how true strength comes from vulnerability rather than invincibility. The story influenced medical professionals as well. The American Cancer Society began studying the psychological impact of appearance changes during cancer treatment, leading to improved support programs for patients struggling with body image issues. Support groups for cancer patients started using Lisa's story as an example of how community acceptance could facilitate healing. The Lisa moment became shorthand in therapy circles for the transformative power of being fully seen and accepted. Lisa's treatment continued for several more months after that concert, but her approach to it was completely different. She stopped wearing wigs, stopped trying to hide her illness, and instead embraced the support of her community. Her openness made it easier for Emma to understand and cope with her mother's illness. Emma, even at 5 years old, became an advocate for authenticity. She would proudly tell people about her brave mommy who showed everyone that being real was more important than looking perfect. Roberto later said that the night at Elvis's concert saved their family in ways that went beyond Lisa's physical health. Lisa had been disappearing into this character she was playing, Niece, the healthy wife and mother. When she took off that wig, she came back to us. She became herself again. Lisa completed her cancer treatment successfully and entered remission 8 months after that memorable concert. She credited not just her medical team but the moment of acceptance she experienced on Elvis's stage with giving her the strength to continue fighting. Years later, Lisa would establish the Real Beauty Foundation, providing support and resources for cancer patients struggling with body image issues. The foundation's motto, inspired by Elvis's words that night, became "Courage isn't about being perfect, it's about being real." Elvis continued performing until his death in 1977, but those who knew him said the Lisa Martinez incident remained one of his most cherished memories. He kept a photo from that night in his dressing room at Graceland, and would often tell visitors about the young mother who taught him that sometimes the most powerful thing a performer can do is help someone find the courage to be themselves. The International Hotel preserved the moment in their own way, creating a small display about the night that included photos from the concert and quotes from attendees. The display's centerpiece was a simple message: beauty is courage made visible. Today, more than 45 years later, Lisa's story continues to inspire people facing their own battles with illness, self-acceptance, and the pressure to appear perfect in an imperfect world. Medical schools use the story to teach future doctors about the psychological aspects of patient care, and therapy training programs reference it as an example of how acceptance can facilitate healing. The concert hall where it happened has long since been renovated, but there's a small plaque backstage that reads, "In honor of Lisa Martinez and all those who find the courage to be real." March 15, 1976. Every performer who plays that venue learns about Elvis and Lisa, and many say it influences how they interact with their own audiences. Lisa Martinez's moment of vulnerability on Elvis's stage reminds us that we all carry fears about being truly seen, truly known, truly accepted. Her story teaches us that sometimes the very things we're most afraid to reveal about ourselves are exactly what the world needs to see. Not because our struggles are entertainment, but because our courage in the face of those struggles can inspire others to find their own strength. The night that began with a young mother trying to hide her cancer battle became a testament to the transformative power of authentic human connection. It showed us that real beauty isn't about perfection. It's about the courage to be vulnerable, to be honest, and to trust that we are worthy of love and acceptance exactly as we are. The psychological impact of that transformative moment extended far beyond the concert hall walls. Dr. Rebecca Chen, who had been treating cancer patients for over 2 decades, happened to be in the audience that night. She later wrote about the experience in the Journal of Psycho-Oncology. "What I witnessed wasn't just a moment of entertainment. It was a masterclass in therapeutic breakthrough." Lisa's decision to remove her wig in front of 15,000 people accomplished what months of counseling sometimes struggle to achieve. Dr. Chen's observations led to a revolution in how medical professionals approached the psychological aspects of cancer treatment. Traditional therapy often focused on helping patients accept their changed appearance privately, in the safety of a counselor's office. But Lisa's experience suggested that public acceptance, being fully seen and embraced by a community, might be even more powerful. The Martinez method, as it came to be known in therapy circles, involved creating opportunities for cancer patients to share their authentic selves with supportive communities. Support groups began organizing events where patients could reveal their true appearance in safe, encouraging environments, always with the understanding that participation was entirely voluntary. Sarah Williams, a 45-year-old teacher from Phoenix who had been hiding her own cancer battle behind wigs and makeup, attended one of these early support group meetings. Lisa's story gave me permission to stop pretending, Sarah said. When I finally took off my wig in front of the group, it wasn't scary anymore. It was liberating. The ripple effects reached into unexpected places. Fashion designers began creating lines specifically for cancer patients, focusing not on hiding the effects of treatment, but on celebrating the beauty of survival. Wig manufacturers started offering authentic beauty consultations, helping patients decide whether they even wanted to wear wigs or preferred to embrace their natural appearance. Lisa herself became an inadvertent expert on the psychology of appearance and illness. Medical schools began inviting her to speak to future doctors about the patient perspective. "What I learned that night with Elvis," she would tell medical students, "is that healing isn't just about treating the disease. It's about treating the whole person, including their fears about how the world sees them." Her talks were particularly powerful because she would often remove her wig during the presentation, demonstrating the vulnerability she had discovered on Elvis's stage. "This is what courage looks like," she would say, running her hand over her bald head. "It's not about being fearless, it's about being afraid and choosing authenticity anyway." The entertainment industry also took notice of what had happened that night. Other performers began incorporating similar moments of authentic human connection into their shows. Country singer Dolly Parton started a tradition of dedicating songs to audience members who were clearly struggling with health issues. Rock musician Bruce Springsteen began inviting fans on stage to share their stories of overcoming adversity. But it was Elvis himself who was most profoundly changed by the experience. Joe Esposito noticed that after the Lisa Martinez incident, Elvis's entire approach to performing evolved. He started seeing every show as an opportunity to heal people, not just entertain them, Joe observed. He'd spend time before each concert asking security to watch for audience members who seemed to be struggling with something. This new awareness led to several more memorable moments during Elvis's remaining performances. In Chicago, he noticed an elderly man who appeared to be saying goodbye to his wife during the show. Elvis learned that the man had terminal cancer and dedicated "It's Now or Never" to their enduring love. In Miami, he spotted a young girl in a wheelchair and spent 10 minutes on stage talking about the different kinds of strength people possess. Each of these incidents, while meaningful, traced back to the template established by Lisa's moment. Elvis had learned that his platform could be a space for healing, acceptance, and authentic human connection. The medical community's response to Lisa's story extended beyond psychology into practical treatment protocols. Oncologists began spending more time discussing appearance changes with patients before they occurred, helping people prepare mentally and emotionally for the physical transformations that treatment might bring. Dr. Michael Rodriguez, who ran a major cancer center in Los Angeles, implemented what he called Truth-Telling Tuesdays, sessions where patients could discuss their fears about how cancer was changing their appearance. Lisa Martinez showed us that secrets about appearance can be as damaging as the disease itself, Dr. Rodriguez explained. When patients stop hiding, they start healing in ways that go beyond the physical. The American Cancer Society commissioned a comprehensive study on the psychological benefits of appearance acceptance among cancer patients. The research, published 3 years after Lisa's concert experience, found that patients who openly discussed and displayed their treatment-related appearance changes showed significantly better mental health outcomes and surprisingly better physical recovery rates as well. Dr. Patricia Williams, the lead researcher on the study, theorized that the energy previously spent on hiding illness could be redirected toward healing when patients embraced authenticity. Lisa Martinez didn't just inspire other cancer patients, Dr. Williams wrote. She demonstrated a principle of healing that we're only beginning to understand. The study's findings influenced treatment protocols worldwide. Cancer centers began offering authenticity counseling alongside traditional therapy. Support groups evolved from private, closed-door meetings to community events where patients could interact with the broader public while feeling supported and protected. Lisa's own family experienced profound changes in the months and years following that concert. Emma, who had been carefully shielded from the reality of her mother's illness, became one of the most well-adjusted children of cancer patients that therapists had ever observed. Child psychologist Dr. Janet Moore, who worked with Emma during Lisa's treatment, noted remarkable emotional maturity in the 5-year-old. Most children whose parents have cancer struggle with anxiety and confusion because they sense something is wrong but don't understand what. Dr. Moore explained. Emma's experience was different because she was allowed to see the truth and witness her community's acceptance of it. Emma began talking about her mother's brave hair, referring to Lisa's bald head with pride rather than shame. She would tell her kindergarten classmates about how her mommy was a cancer fighter and how Elvis had told everyone that being real was more beautiful than being perfect. This openness created a ripple effect among the other families at Emma's school. Parents who had been hiding their own struggles with illness, job loss, or family problems began sharing more honestly with their children and with each other. The school counselor, Mrs. Patricia Jenkins, later wrote about what she called the Emma effect in a child psychology journal. Children are incredibly resilient when they're told the truth in age-appropriate ways, Mrs. Jenkins wrote. Emma Martinez became living proof that honesty, even about scary topics, creates stronger families than protection through deception. Roberto's perspective on his wife's illness also transformed dramatically after that concert. Before Lisa's moment with Elvis, he had been carrying enormous guilt about their financial situation, their inability to afford better wigs, and his fear that he wasn't protecting his family adequately. "I thought my job was to make everything perfect for Lisa and Emma," Roberto said in a later interview. "But watching Lisa take off that wig and seeing how everyone celebrated her courage, I realized that perfection wasn't what my family needed. They needed me to be real too." Roberto began opening up to his co-workers about Lisa's illness and their family's struggles. The response was overwhelmingly supportive. His construction crew took up a collection to help with medical bills, and several co-workers' wives began bringing meals to the Martinez family regularly. The couple's marriage, which had been strained by the secrecy and fear surrounding Lisa's diagnosis, grew stronger through shared authenticity. "We stopped pretending everything was okay and started working together to make things actually okay," Lisa reflected years later. The financial aspect of their crisis also improved once they stopped hiding their situation. A local charity that helped families facing medical emergencies learned about their story and provided significant support. A wig company, inspired by Lisa's message about authentic beauty, began a program providing free, high-quality wigs to cancer patients who wanted them while also supporting those who chose to go without. The Las Vegas community embraced Lisa's story in ways that surprised everyone involved. The International Hotel began featuring her photograph in their lobby, along with a plaque about the power of authentic courage. Local businesses started reaching out to support cancer patients and their families, creating a network of community care that hadn't existed before. The moment also had lasting impact on how Las Vegas, a city built on illusion and performance, viewed authenticity and real human connection. Several other hotels began training staff to recognize and appropriately respond when guests were dealing with health crises or personal struggles. Elvis's own band and crew were deeply affected by what they had witnessed. Charlie Hodge, Elvis's longtime guitarist, said the Lisa Martinez incident changed how he thought about their role as entertainers. "We realized we weren't just backing up Elvis," Hodge reflected. "We were part of something bigger, helping people feel less alone in their struggles." The musicians began paying closer attention to audience members during performances, always ready to support Elvis if he spotted someone who needed encouragement. This created a team approach to the healing aspects of performance that became a hallmark of Elvis's later shows. The media coverage of Lisa's story spread far beyond entertainment news into health and wellness publications. Women's magazines began featuring articles about finding beauty during illness. Medical journals published papers about the therapeutic value of community acceptance. Psychology Today ran a cover story titled, "The Healing Power of Being Seen." International media picked up the story as well. The BBC produced a documentary about Lisa's experience that aired across Europe. Japanese television created a program about authentic beauty that featured Lisa's story prominently. The concept of finding strength through vulnerability resonated across cultures and languages. Fashion magazines, initially resistant to featuring cancer patients without wigs, began changing their approach after Lisa's story went viral. Vogue ran a groundbreaking photo spread featuring cancer survivors at various stages of treatment, all choosing to appear without wigs or scarves. The accompanying article was titled, "Real Beauty: The Lisa Martinez Effect." The modeling industry also began to evolve, slowly incorporating models who represented different experiences of beauty, including those who had survived serious illnesses. While this change took years to fully develop, many traced its origins back to the night a young mother removed her wig on an Elvis stage. Educational institutions began using Lisa's story in various curricula. Medical schools included it in courses about patient psychology. Business schools used it as a case study in authentic leadership. Communication programs analyzed it as an example of how vulnerability can create powerful connection. High schools began inviting Lisa to speak to students about self-acceptance and the courage to be authentic in a world that often pressures people to present perfect images. Her talks were particularly powerful for teenage audiences struggling with their own appearance anxieties and social pressures. You don't have to wait until you're facing a life-threatening illness to choose authenticity, Lisa would tell high school students. Every day you have the choice between being perfect and being real. I learned the hard way that real is always better. Religious communities also found meaning in Lisa's story. Churches, synagogues, mosques, and other spiritual centers began incorporating messages about authentic self-acceptance into their teachings. Many religious leaders saw parallels between Lisa's moment of vulnerability and various spiritual traditions' emphasis on truth and authenticity. Pastor Michael Johnson of the First Baptist Church of Las Vegas, who had been in the audience that night, began using Lisa's story in sermons about spiritual courage. "What Lisa showed us," Pastor Johnson would say, "is that sometimes the most spiritual thing we can do is stop pretending to be someone we're not." The international cancer community embraced Lisa's message with particular enthusiasm. Cancer support organizations worldwide began incorporating Lisa Martinez moments into their programs, opportunities for patients to share their authentic selves with supportive communities. The World Health Organization commissioned a study on the global impact of appearance-related anxiety among cancer patients. The research, conducted in 15 countries, found that Lisa's story had influenced cancer care protocols on multiple continents. Treatment centers from Australia to Sweden reported implementing programs inspired by her experience. As Lisa's own treatment progressed, she documented her journey through a blog that gained hundreds of thousands of readers worldwide. Her honest discussions about the daily realities of cancer treatment, the good days and the small victories and the setbacks, provided comfort and guidance to countless patients and families. The blog became a book, titled Beautiful and Bald: Finding Courage in Cancer, which became a bestseller and was translated into 12 languages. The proceeds funded the Real Beauty Foundation that Lisa established to support cancer patients struggling with appearance-related anxiety. Elvis continued to reference Lisa's story in interviews and performances until his death in 1977. In one of his final interviews, he was asked what moment in his career he was most proud of. Without hesitation, he mentioned the night he helped a young mother find the courage to be herself. "I've sung for presidents and kings," Elvis said. "I've performed for millions of people around the world, but the night I helped Lisa Martinez take off that wig and show everyone her true beauty, that's when I really understood what it means to be an entertainer. It's not about the music, though music is wonderful. It's about helping people find their own courage." After Elvis's death, Lisa attended his memorial service at Graceland. She was photographed standing beside his grave, bald and beautiful, holding a single rose. The image became iconic, representing the lasting impact of their brief but meaningful connection. Today, nearly 5 decades after that transformative night in Las Vegas, Lisa Martinez continues to advocate for authentic self-acceptance. Now in her 70s, she remains cancer-free and continues to speak at medical conferences, support groups, and schools around the world. The Real Beauty Foundation has helped thousands of cancer patients navigate the psychological challenges of treatment. The Foundation's signature program, True Self Tuesdays, creates supportive environments where patients can experiment with authentic self-presentation without judgment or pressure. The concert hall where Lisa's moment occurred has been renamed the Lisa Martinez Authenticity Center, acknowledging the lasting impact of what happened there. A bronze statue near the entrance depicts a woman removing a wig while a crowd applauds Elvis, a permanent reminder of the night that changed how the world thinks about beauty, courage, and the power of being real. Medical schools continue to study Lisa's experience as part of their patient care curricula. The Martinez moment has become shorthand in medical education for the breakthrough that occurs when patients stop hiding their illness and start embracing community support. Emma, now an adult with children of her own, works as a pediatric oncology social worker, helping families navigate childhood cancer with honesty and courage. She often tells the children she works with about the night her mother showed her that being real is more important than looking perfect. "My mom taught me that beauty isn't about having hair or looking healthy," Emma tells her young patients. "Beauty is about having the courage to be exactly who you are, even when it's scary." Roberto, now retired, volunteers with the Real Beauty Foundation and often speaks to spouses and partners of cancer patients about the importance of supporting authenticity over perfection in their relationships. The story of Lisa Martinez, Elvis Presley, and one transformative moment in Las Vegas continues to inspire people facing their own battles with illness, self-acceptance, and the pressure to present a perfect image to the world. It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is remove our masks, literal or metaphorical, and trust that we are worthy of love and acceptance exactly as we are. Have you ever hidden part of yourself because you were afraid of how others might react? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because just like Lisa Martinez discovered that night in Las Vegas, sometimes the truth we're most afraid to reveal is exactly what can set us free and inspire others to embrace their own authentic selves.